Welcome to Vineyard Fullerton. We're happy you're here on a Saturday night, which is the only night you can come here. We don't have any Sunday morning services. So if you're new here, I hope you met someone. We usually have a group of people that kind of heads out to a restaurant in that area, walking distance, or you can drive to Gary's Bank, which is 1 block away. And you might enjoy dinner, drinks, whatever, after the service. Tonight we have kind of a special sort of night. Every once in a while, when we end a series or we're winding down a series, we have some opportunities to share. So we're going to have a couple people interviewed and another couple people share a little bit more about this Blessed series and from some real life experiences. Just some quick announcements. Since our community groups are ending next week, we then go into our affinity group season, I guess you could call it. So if you have any idea, any reason to gather, any sort of group you want to do for a day, a night, a week, a month, I guess you can do it for 3 weeks total, because then community groups start back up in March. But let us know. We would love to give you opportunities to gather. I think we're switching our Tuesday night at the church to Thursdays. And we're going to do our first Thursday as a church on the Thursday before Christmas Eve. So our candlelight Advent service will be on the Thursday before Christmas Eve, not on Christmas Eve. So that way, if you guys need to go travel, be with family and stuff like that. We'll start at 7, not at 5. So we'll be here at 7. You'll be out of here by 8. And we have a Christmas party that we're doing. We'll give you information about that. We'll do a taco truck after service, our white elephant gift, some Trivial Pursuit. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, we'll do a special sort of night of worship. We have a friend that you guys might know from Minnesota who will come down. We'll share some songs that we've written or we've recorded with him, and we'll do our own music. And then Melissa promises me that she will share a new Vineyard worship song from Vineyard Fullerton. So that'll all be on the 28th. Again, an easy sort of way to invite neighbors and friends to come to a, quote, concert or group karaoke, however you want to describe it. But we'll have that, and we start our Advent series. So before we start tonight, Alinda has one more reminder for you guys, and then we'll meet some of our newest members of Vineyard Fullerton.
Hi, blanket lady here again. So I'm kind of looking out because I want to see if any of our guests that some of us here encounter twice a month are here. I don't see them. However, I want you to imagine just for a second that you're sitting here tonight as one of the unhomed guests that we encounter, but when you leave here, you don't have wherever you usually go when you leave here to go to. You're going to walk out there on Harbor Boulevard or Commonwealth or something and just look around and go, wherever I find a place to lie down is where I get to sleep tonight. That's hard for me to fathom and extremely scary. But it would be even more so if I was wearing I only had what I was wearing and a backpack. And even if I could find a hedge behind me that somebody wouldn't chase me out from behind, I wouldn't have anything warm to cover up in or lie on. That's where we're asking for your help. We need to help our friends that we encounter at the laundry ministry, shower and laundry ministry. We serve between 40 and 60 every 2 weeks, first and third Saturday mornings. And then at the laundry ministry, there's a whole other bunch. We would also like to have enough blankets where if there are some of you who are willing to encounter people either out on Harbor or in the shopping center at Chapman and come on, Linda, State College, because they sleep there behind the Staples store or Home Depot, whichever it is this week. Anyway, so that you could have a couple in your trunk to give to somebody if you just saw somebody and said, gee, I'd like to help them. So blankets, please, blankets. Thin quilts, we don't want so much that they look like they're carrying something like this down the street. No stains, tears, clean, please. and think dignity and think blessing back to our series again. So please bring them to church. Okay, if they wanted to call the church number and say they wanted me to get a hold of them, you would give them contact info for me to meet them somewhere. If you have like a whole trunk load of them or something in the week between. So I'll catch up with you any way I can to get those blankets. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. I think it was last year, the year before, we got a bunch of them. We kept them in a closet, and then we gave them all away, so it was really great. So definitely bring those here. We'll find a place for them for sure. We also are still taking donations that we were collecting at Roscoe's for our shower laundry ministry as well. We had gift cards and grocery cards and things like that. So if you put them in these white boxes for giving, we'll know that those are for the shower laundry ministry as well. And we'll be back at Roscoe's for our annual Christmas sing-along party on the 9th of December. So definitely come and sing along. That'll be a lot of fun. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. I don't know if Jana and Jonathan want the stools or not, but they're here for you. But I want you guys to meet Jonathan and Jana. The weird thing is they're so hospitable that you've probably already met them. And many of you have probably been in their house or around their neighborhood or something. So it's been really great to get to know them. And this is, I think, a great series for them to share because they're kind of living the stuff that we've been talking about. And if you haven't been with us, I know some of our friends all the way from way back in Kentucky are here. So good to see you guys. But we've been doing a series called Bless. We've been looking at this acronym, right? Begin with prayer, listen, eat, or hospitality, serve and share your story. And so I wanted to ask Jonathan and Jana some questions. And I'm just going to give them 3 questions and let them respond. Do we want to give them 2 microphones? Do you guys want just one? Darren, look at Darren. He carries a mic to church with him. He always has that with him. I've seen him on the freeway go, excuse me. So
can we have 2?
Yeah.
That way, if Jana decides to interrupt me,
yeah,
she can.
I'll give it. Yeah. Here's another one. Darren actually does his own Waze narration, which is interesting.
I only feel weird about the stool because we're on stools and you're standing. It makes me feel like
I'll go down here, so I'm super small.
I'm half on, half on. I can't half on, half off. I can't commit. So.
That's okay. Well,
this is us.
We do have a marriage group, so we. Just kidding. So I wanted to ask them 3 questions. Is this better for you guys? So I can look up to your expertise. And I wanted to share those with you as well. And then I wanted them just to share kind of from real life experience. And the first one is kind of what's your story and how did you end up here in this building at Vineyard Fullerton?
Today we took Jonathan's Prius. We actually, so.
She's the funny one.
We were not looking to come to Vineyard Fullerton, and often God brings you places that you were not planning on being. I just told Krista and Eric that I think our first Sunday was it's Saturday. Our first Saturday was probably a year ago in November, and it took us a while to commit to deciding we were coming here. We were in a season where we had not been, we were in between churches. We were doing some cool stuff with our neighbors on Sunday mornings. And then just as we felt, okay, I think it's time to find a church, we Googled lots of churches. We're going, and we thought this was a Foursquare church. So we're like, because we had a friend with Foursquare, and we're like, we're going to support our Foursquare church friend, and we can't do something on Sunday, so we're going to find a Saturday church that we think is Foursquare. I think I heard of it, and here we are.
And there's more to that story, but it's a total God story why we ended up here. And like Jana said, in that sort of in-between season between churches, we had gotten into this really awesome rhythm of using Sunday mornings because a lot of people who aren't in a church on Sunday mornings, which is most people, have the morning free, right? There's not as many sports activities or things like people are hanging out, and so we started to kind of invite neighbors and other friends over on Sunday morning, and we'll talk about that maybe in a couple minutes, but I think part of the cool thing is that God brought us to a community that only meets, I always tell people, only on Saturday evenings, and so we've been able to continue that rhythm with neighbors and friends and family on Sunday mornings. So if you want to hear the whole story sometime, I guess you'll have to ask us. So thanks.
Yeah, and we are a Foursquare church. The Foursquares sit right back there. That's a joke from the 1950s. Squares? No? Wow. Tough crowd. I got 2 more questions, and this crowd's hostile. So, next question. Tell us a little bit about your neighborhood and what God's put on your heart for neighboring. You said that you guys, were doing some stuff with your neighbors on Sunday morning. What's going on there?
This week actually on Wednesday will be our 3-year anniversary of moving into our neighborhood, which is kind of cool that it coincides with the series we've been going through. When we moved in, we never had a conversation together about, oh, it's really important for us to get to know our neighbors. It just, somehow it was the ethos of us moving in, and we realized we want to know and love the people that are around us. So through a lot of being outside, walking around, seeing people, introducing ourselves to people, we got to know our neighbors very well. A lot of that came through COVID shutting down things, so people were like out and about and close, and hey, let's take advantage of that and interact with people and then build relationship. And as Jonathan mentioned, we went through a long, lovely season of having people over for breakfast on Sunday mornings, and a lot of those being our neighbors, and just being able to sit down for a meal together was built a lot of relationship, and then out of that, events happened, and getting together happened, and just we like to do things and make things happen, and so just relationally with people were willing to join together and get together for things in the neighborhood and events in the neighborhood, and I'm going to let you keep going.
Yeah, I think some of the backstory on that is when we lived in the old place where we lived, we were in an apartment, and we never. I think one of the things that, like we talked about in sort of preparation for tonight, is that whether you live in a house or a condo or an apartment, it doesn't matter where you live. Like, we all have a neighborhood. We all have a community of people who live physically, geographically around us. Anyway, so we felt kind of convicted, and I think it's the Holy Spirit, when we moved into our house 3 years ago, that like, oh, it's important for us to know these people. And I'm sharing that because it's cool that now 3 years later, like, we have all these really great relationships with our neighbors, and we're kind of living in community and trying to live out like what we've been talking about the last few weeks. But it wasn't always like that, and I think it's, it doesn't look the same for everyone the way we've chosen to approach it. Like we talked about the shape model or whatever last week, thinking about what our giftings are, kind of reading the temperature in our room, in our neighborhood. But anyway, it totally is the Holy Spirit and the Lord that like put on our hearts, like, we need to be in community with these people who live geographically around us. And there's no way to describe it other than supernatural, because we just had so much favor, as Jana said, like, as the world was literally shutting down, we would go outside for walks, or we'd see people walking their dogs or riding their bikes, and at a time when people were not leaving their neighborhood, or maybe not even leaving their house. But in that crazy season when no one knew what was going on, we were just able to meet a ton of people just by being outside, being visible, being available, some of those things that we've talked about. So you were going to share about your Draw the Circle thing too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of part of that story.
Yeah, even before even coming here, so it doesn't matter. But a couple years ago, I was reading this book called Draw the Circle, and it was like a 40-day prayer challenge, and circling being praying around something. And so I remember, it was like during the Lent season, right after or before, I took these 40 days to begin with prayer and literally walk around our neighborhood and just pray. Like, okay, God, we're in this season. This is what's going on. What do you have for us? This is where our heart is. What does this look like? And so that was a couple of years ago, even before like building deeper relationships, just like beginning to build relationships, walking around and praying. And I had certain days of the week when I ran that I would pray for neighbors and pray for our neighborhood. And so it was like, I'm praying with this, I'm praying with that, so I'm walking around circles. What do you have? And I think so often, like, I end this 40 days and like, oh, there was no big revelation, whatever. But now I like look back and I'm like, wow, like God really did. He really did bless that. And I think I firmly believe out of that circling around my neighborhood, a lot of it has led to the relationships we've built now and what we have. And also, we mess up a lot. Like, we but there are also times and we have an alley, so we have double neighbors, alley neighbors, and front neighbors, which is awesome. But there have been so many times that I like drive into the alley and I see a neighbor's garage up. I'm like, no, I just want to be home. Like, I don't want to talk with you. You talk too much. Like, I just want to go home. So that is very real too. Even though there is such favor and great relationships, there's a very like battle of, okay, God, like I am just gonna say hi. Sorry, I gotta go. Shut my garage. And I'm like, oh dang it, I'm supposed to like be this great neighbor. So there is like a reality that things that like don't do well all the time.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think we've also talked about during the series, like, and I think that's the next question, right? But there are things that we can do that like cost nothing except a little bit of our time, like beginning with prayer, right? Praying for our neighbors, praying for the physical spaces that we are in, whether it's our home or work or school or whatever place we find ourselves, and then listening, right? Those are things we can do that are free, that only take our time, intentionality. And so I think, again, you know, like I mentioned a minute ago, I think it doesn't look the same for everyone. Obviously, we're just sharing like part of our story, and you don't have to do it the way we've done it. But like Jana shared a few minutes ago, like I think by being intentional with people, either individually or couples or families, inviting them into our home, onto our front lawn, for a walk around the neighborhood, whatever it was, sort of building that, you know, relational capital and trust and community one by one or family by family or house by house. Then when things kind of started to open up and we were sort of teaming up with some other neighbors to host like a 4th of July block party, or we did like a chili cook-off, or we did these other little neighborly events, people came because they already knew somebody, right? Because they had already built a relationship, whether it's with us or another neighbor. So I think that like we've sort of seen those building blocks happen and come together over time, as opposed to just like, hey, we're going to do this thing and nobody shows up because they don't know anybody there, they don't trust anybody there, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway.
All right, so my other question and last question was going to be, how has God been speaking to you through this Bless series? You guys kind of shared that. But usually, you know, when you start to press in, like Jana said, and you start to seek God, God's pretty good at pushing you more and giving you more and challenging you more. And so I wanted you guys to share about that. And I wanted you guys to share about your map idea as well.
So I would say,
yes.
Even before this series, this has been on our heart. And so being this Bless series, yes, it is geared, like we talk a lot about neighbors, but also workplace, school, whatever. But neighbor stuff has been so on our heart that it's been so encouraging to be able to talk about this here at church or in our community group. I remember talking with some mentors of ours over months and months, just this is what we're experiencing in our neighborhood, and like, what do we do with it, and how can we reach all these things? And so it's just been encouraging knowing that that's been on our hearts. And I think another reason that God was very clear on, hey, here's Vineyard Fullerton. And I'm like, okay, well, all these things are coming together. So I think a lot of this really relates. And I would say too that beginning with prayer has been a really big one. We're like, yeah, we got the eating down. Like that has been something that's the ethos of what we do with our neighbors. And also, you talk about God pushing you into things. I would say too, what's been a big realization for me is that I can say it really is only God, because Jonathan is the extrovert to the max. People, yes, all the time. And Jana is introvert, like I can just be by myself. Too many people, too much all the time. But I have seen like so much of the way we interact with neighbors and do things, I'm like, that is not me natural at all. And I think that Jonathan has really, like being with Jonathan has really like brought me more towards that side, but also it's the Holy Spirit. And I can say that is so much God, because that is not my natural instinct. And I think this idea of, we were talking about this idea of bless and the cringy phrased, sorry if you use it, blessed to be a blessing, right?
Wade says it, so you can't.
Oh.
You just totally threw him under the bus.
It's actually in the Bible, so.
But we were talking about this idea of blessing our neighbors, and then we feel blessed. So like a backwards way of that.
We said blessed to be a blessing, and we're blessing others and then being blessed. So like you can invert it or reverse it, whatever.
Yeah, you can use that. So that is something. And also I want to go back to like part of our story, something I really connected with last week. And for both of us, we grew up in the church, and so there's this idea and story of I don't have this great testimony and whatnot, but last week Wade talking about the beauty of God getting better and better over time as you continue to walk with him. I was just so struck with, yes, that is it. Like, God has become better and better and better as I have like stepped into these things and moved forward and let him lead. That is not me naturally. And I'm like, okay, God, like this is exciting. What are you doing? So yeah, I don't have this crazy conversion story, but God has like become so much more exciting over time as I have continued to walk with him in that.
And I think, whether you're single, married, divorced, a grandparent, whatever your sort of stage in life, obviously God is using you where you're at and who you are. But I think, for us, it's been really impactful. Like we said, when we, the place we first lived after we got married, this wasn't something that was on our heart. But then again, when we moved here to Fullerton, and that's actually part of how we ended up at Vineyard Fullerton. Like we wanted to come to a church that was here in our city. But anyway, like this is something that like God has really revealed to us as something we get to do in ministry together. And we never, if we had tried to just do it or force it, I think it would have felt totally contrived. But it's this thing that, as Jana shared, like came up totally naturally for us. And as a way, like she said, she's been stretched, I've been stretched in different ways. And it's definitely a thing that we get to partner on and do together. It's hard sometimes too. We've just the last couple of weeks been talking about like, we don't always feel like we have capacity, or like, how do we spend time with all these people we love and our church community and our family and our friends, whatever else. So there's definitely like, challenges of it. But I think overall it's been like such an encouragement and a gift to our relationship together, and that we can bless people kind of with our home, with the resources that God's given us. And then the other thing I was going to say, besides it not looking the same for everybody, but I just lost my train of thought. Okay.
I'll
I'm
start
looking at
talking,
Jana.
and hopefully
it's fine.
You
it's
figure
good.
it out.
It probably wasn't important. There we go. There it's gone.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Go.
I got it. It's back. Okay. Woo! We'll be here for the next 2.5 minutes, so thank you. No, I was just going to say, I think something that's been, like, this is obviously something that we're really passionate about, and, we have tons of, like, anecdotes and things we'd love to share, and I know some of you we've connected, whether in community group or individually, just talking about the good work that we feel like God is doing in us and through us in our neighborhood. So if anyone ever, like, wants to talk about it, like, we would love to do it. We could do it at our house, at Starbucks, here at church, whatever. But I think something that I just felt really convicted by earlier today when Jan and I were talking about what we're going to share tonight, as you can tell, was totally scripted 100%, is, this sermon series ends next week or whenever it is, and I know Mike's going to share, which is awesome. So if you're not busy that day, you should definitely come and hear what Mike has to share. Anyway, but I think that this is something that I think we're all called to, and, sometimes we think like, whether it's because I don't, love to socialize with people, or I feel like I don't have a physical space that I can open up. I think that we all have some responsibility when it comes to blessing our community, whether, again, that's our physical neighborhood or otherwise. And I also think that doesn't end when the sermon series ends. So that's just something that I just, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep doing it. And we invite you to be part of that with us in your spaces. And we'd love to just talk if we can help encourage you or empower you, or just swap ideas of, what might work in your neighborhood or whatever it is. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
And
the map.
I know, I'm good. I'm getting to the map.
Yeah. Told you.
So the map,
They'll turn on you.
for
They'll
example,
turn on you.
the map is all Jana, because
Okay, so this
Jana,
is a generic version of what Jana created. I just wanted to show you this, but Jana
Jana's
can
is way
explain
better. I'm just
what's
gonna
on.
say.
She made it anonymous so you wouldn't know who her neighbors were. This is on her refrigerator. I saw it. So give us a tool to go with. Like, okay, what can we do as,
Yeah, and I think part of what you said last week too about our relationship with Jesus being like 3 miles per hour, right? And I was thinking, so it is with our neighborhood. Like, we are like experiencing fruit of a lot of just 3 miles per hour of having relationships with people. Every time we interact with a neighbor is not this like, oh my gosh, amazing deep conversation, but it's like consistent 3 miles per hour walking with our neighbors. And then sometimes it's like 30 miles an hour. And sometimes it's all things. But I made this, I think, pretty soon after we moved in, just this map of our neighborhood and the surrounding houses behind us and behind on the other side. And just, it started kind of as a challenge for who lives around us. And then it became like really exciting. Like, yes, it's a challenge. I'm really task oriented. So sometimes like, ooh, who can I add? Because I don't have that one. But it's like a good encouraging, like these people, like I see them and I know they live there and I want to add them to the map. And I only feel like I can add them to the map when I actually have like seen and interacted with them. So
you can see we still have some work to do.
Yeah.
We still have some blank spots on our map 3 years into living at our place. And I don't know what I was going to say about that. But yeah. And we've also seen people like turn over, which has been
which
really
is why I
interesting.
do it in
like,
pencil, and it's really sad.
Anyway,
Because there have been people that moved away.
Right? Move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turnover.
turnover, like, sleep. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's been some turnover. No, so I would say, and it doesn't even have to be your neighborhood. We talked about this in community group a little bit, like could be your workplace or your school. It's important for us thinking about what is physically around you and kind of feeling the heartbeat of that. We were talking about this with Darren and Laurelyn. Like our neighborhoods are physically built with houses close together. So it really lends well to, like, we're really in each other's space pretty much if we're outside and whatnot, which we can use to our advantage. So just recognizing what is physically around us. And so for you, your houses might be spread way apart, or you might be in apartments, or you might, like, no one has their doors open. So, but what would it look like for you to get to know your surroundings? And it could look like this, and it could look like something else that is integral to where you are.
Very cool.
There's also our mailman.
Thank you, guys.
I told Laurelyn that we were going to filibuster so they wouldn't even get to do their speech. So we can stay up here. I mean, if you guys want the night off.
I told you, the crowd will turn on you. I don't have to do anything. Robbie doesn't even need that cane. He'll just hit you with it. So, that's why he sits so close. It's like, Apollo. Yeah. So, thanks you guys. And please keep praying for them as they continue to do this, as you continue to partner with them and share with them. Again, I've been in their neighborhood. I've seen it, and they really do what they do. And if you think about it, I mean, we've done Roscoe's 3 times. One time they just walked right by because it was Jana's birthday, but they always bring people. And then pretty soon those people are in our bands and all of, so it's kind of like we want to partner with you as a church. We want to partner with you as people to see new God stories. Right, we want to see countercultural stories, as some of us learned this week at our AAPI summit. That we need countercultural stories to show the gospel to other people, and it's okay to take risks and fail. It's okay to not always have a triumphant, victorious story, but to be in process. And I like that your map still has work to do, because we all do. So thanks, you guys. Woo. All right, so Darren, I think I have your car mic. Did you want your house mic? He's got another one. See, he has a backup. So if you guys don't know Darren and Laurelyn, Darren is my brother. Laurelyn is his wife, which is my sister-in-law, who's like a sister to me. And you guys know them. We've known them forever. And they live, it's interesting, they live like literally one street over from Jonathan and Jana, totally different map, totally different situation, and we've been a part of their stories, a little bit of their neighbor stories as well. So we wanted them to share as well. So I'm gonna just not interview them, not talk anymore, and let them take over. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it. And as Jonathan, oh yeah, great, the clicker. Put it on. As Jonathan said, really take them up on that offer seriously, to ask them about what they do, and just it will be super encouraging to you. And also, I don't want you to hear that like people are projects to them. They love people. They want to do life together, and they do it. And if you're ever part of like the things they do with their neighbors, people love them too. It's pretty amazing. So they really like embody being neighbors as opposed to like doing. Doing the neighbor thing, I guess. And so that's sort of what our story is about tonight, our sort of journey from let's do neighboring to actually what it meant to transform and become neighbors. And we weren't as good at it. So it took us some time. So in 2003, we moved to this house on Bayview. It was in a gated community. Beautiful 2-story house, all new homes. The lawns were kept. I remember like the kind of places that have like a flag that like would say Cocker Spaniels, or like, whatever, Shih Tzus or like Welcome Fall. But it's that kind of thing. And so it's beautiful, lots of mid-career working people. And so it was designed to foster community, but in reality, the type, like it's just the garage door opens, you pull in, right, slam it down, and that was it. And so for us, in our wisdom, in our young age, we desired to live in a community where people like interacted, where neighbors were working on their houses, garages were open, kids were in the front yard, and they were doing life together. And this was not happening. And so we said, we need to begin with prayer. Not really. We said, Lord, lead us somewhere out of here, because clearly this isn't it, and lead us to the house and neighborhood that you have for us. So began our journey into becoming neighbors. We packed up our stuff in this pod that didn't fit all the stuff. It was overflowing, but we did it. We sold our house, and we took literally a few weeks' worth of clothes. We said, that's all we need. We're just going to turn this around, and God's going to show us. And that 4 to 5 weeks turned into 9 months, where we were waiting. We were in the wilderness. It was a hard time. I can go into that in another series if you have me back, Wade. But during that time, we trusted God. We really did. And as a family, we prayed together, and we said, we brought the kids in, Jack, who was 4. We said, what is God showing you? And he said, a greenhouse. So we said, all right. And Jude said, who was 6, said, I think the Holy Spirit is going to tell you when you have the right house, when you walk in. And we said, sounds great. That's really awesome. So we kept that. We prayed for those things. So a house finally comes up on Nutwood, right, our little street. And we got to get a previewing before it went on the market. So we come down the street, right, there's people working outside on their house. Garages are open. Kids are playing in the driveway. And I'm like, this could be it. We walk in. I don't even think we saw the condition of the house or anything. We immediately began to cry, felt the Holy Spirit. And our realtor begins to cry and says, you're going to host Bible study in this room. And so we were like, wow, and the house was green. So we said, all right. So we put an offer on it. Then comes Halloween. We hadn't even moved in yet. And we thought, let's meet our neighbors now. This is the neighborhood we've been praying for. So we took the boys around, and we're like, hi, we're the new neighbors. We're Darren and Lauren. And they were distracted. They were disinterested. They were like kind of like, oh, that's nice. Move along. So we were like, what is this? But if you understand, if you've ever been on Nutwood Avenue in Fullerton at Halloween, it is crazy. It's like Mardi Gras. There's thousands of kids that come through. And but it's a decades tradition for that street. So it's like basically where they have a chance to host and bless the wider community. And we completely missed that because we were in our own brain of like, be neighbors, this isn't working. So we got out of there perplexed and pretty discouraged. So a month later, we move in. The first neighbor we met was Steve, right over there. Woo! He's mowing his lawn, good sign, and he welcomed us in and offered to help with anything we needed. Our other next-door neighbors were very challenging. There was a group of 20-somethings, renting in there. They all but maybe trashed the house. My assumption was they were serious drug users. I think they were doing a rendition of Breaking Bad. But it was enough, and then, and these late night parties they would have, the type that start on Sunday night at 10:30, those. So it would start up, and we would just be in our room, sitting up in bed, hearing every raunchy, vile, loud conversation that would go into the wee hours of morning. And so then there we were again, right? We began to pray, but this time it was, God, please reassign us, get us out of here. Right? I mean, they were friendly to us, and they gave us courtesy invites to all their parties. They did. No, they did. And they were nice to the boys when the boys were playing outside. They even bought them these illegal Roman candles one 4th of July. Remember, the kids were 4 and 6, but still. They showed us kindness in the way they knew how, in their currency. But this was not the neighboring we had in mind, so we kept missing it. And after a year of enduring their tattered pirate flag, right, and the zombie heads that hung from the porch, which we had assumed was just for Halloween, but it stayed year-round. So we secretly yearned for the Cocker Spaniel flags and the closed garage doors. Yeah, I think if we're honest. Yeah.
In Acts 17, the Apostle Paul is talking to some philosophers in Athens, and he's looking around and he's noting all the numerous idols and altars that they have to all the different gods. And they have one reserved for the unknown God. Wade talked about this a couple weeks ago. And this is kind of like an insurance policy in case they forgot somebody. So Paul says to them, he says, "Oh, I know that God. And in fact, he's the one who made everything, and he made everyone." And Paul says that God determined the times set for them, the people he made, and the exact places where they should live. Well, we didn't feel like that was true for us. Or at least we felt like maybe we'd made a mistake in our move. And even though, we'd seen so many of God's fingerprints, the whole process, some of the things Darren shared about, we just didn't feel like this could be the Kairos moment that God had in mind, or that this could be the time and the place for us. So nevertheless, we kept looking for ways to connect with our neighbors and try to be in our neighborhood. So every year during the Christmas season, our street pools its money and resources and manpower, and we build these and hang these huge Christmas ornaments from the giant Chinese elm trees that line our street. And it's a huge job. We rent a cherry picker. People go up in the cherry picker and hang these sparkle balls. And there's about 40 homes on our street, so it's a pretty big project each year. So anyway, we thought, okay, let's get involved. This is a perfect time to get involved. So we got involved in this community building effort, and we quickly learned that, like any neighborhood or any family, our street carried old grudges and had factions. And while we worked alongside some of our neighbors to hang sparkle balls, we heard a lot of gossip, a lot of grumbling, a lot of cynicism. We saw where people had built their little kingdoms and that those had been pretty heavily fortified. The sparkle balls looked great when we were all done, but the relationship building we were hoping for just wasn't available, really. So about a year after we moved in, the owners of the house next door to us reoccupied the home. And as kind as the former tenants had been, we were happy to see them move on. So we began to have other kids from the neighborhood over and play with our boys, and we began to find out that some kids weren't allowed to play with other kids. And some kids were trained to hate other kids because of grudges that their parents had formed against the kids' parents. And much of this took place on our driveway. So our vision as neighbors had been this vision of hospitality, but we saw so much hostility. And as disappointing as this was, it really forced us into listening. I'm an English teacher. That's my disclaimer for this slide. So hostility and hospitality do share some space. Their common ground is the stranger. So hostility is a word that indicates the fear and separation between me and the stranger, followed probably by self-preservation and maybe anger, rejection. Whereas hospitality indicates providing for and protecting the stranger. Think of a hospital or hospice care. These are words that are formed from that idea of hospitality. So in Leviticus, the author, Moses, I guess, writes, "When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God." So through this, God makes it really clear what we're supposed to do with strangers. So even though our vision of what it would look like to move into this neighborhood didn't really match our initial experience, God began to teach us through our neighbors what it looked like to show hospitality to strangers or to new neighbors.
So our first Christmas there, we got a real tree, and we were so excited because our house had this old fireplace in it. So, of course, when the tree was gone, I took all the decorations off, I cut that thing up, and I was like planning to make this great fire. Anyone who's tried to burn a Christmas tree knows it goes up pretty quick. So I shoved it in the fireplace, lit it, turned into a fireball, smoke billowed into the house and out of the house. But within like seconds, 4 neighbors, and 4 that don't really get along, were at our doors and back doors banging to take care of us, to save us in case something was happening. And it really stuck with me. I was embarrassed, but still, you know. There's another neighbor who would call me over on each holiday and like open up his bin of, you know, extra whatever it is, Christmas things or Halloween things, and would let me take my pick, like grab bag it every year just to basically share with me, and it meant a lot. And then there's Steve, who every project I'm doing, I almost feel bad. I want to do projects in the backyard so he doesn't see me, but when I do a project in the front yard, he's there with this crazy assortment of tools, and then he stands beside me and digs and sledgehammers and everything. So this is, yeah, true story.
Another neighbor who was under extreme financial hardship, she found this makeshift wine cellar underneath their house. And there were some really old and expensive bottles of wine in there. And she, despite their really desperate situation financially, she dusted off this fine bottle of wine and marched over to my front porch with 2 empty glasses. And she was so excited to share her abundance. And that meant quite a lot to me. And then I think another thing that's been a teaching thing for us is that collectively our street practices this sort of fruit co-op. And most of our houses have at least 1 fruit tree planted in the backyard or in the front yard. And so on any given day, you might find a bag of apples or grapefruits on your front porch, or like one neighbor will fill kind of to-go bags with kumquats or lemons and leave them out on his driveway, so when you're walking by, you can grab one and take it home with you. And so this sharing is not based on need. Everyone has a fruit tree, pretty much, but it's a posture of generosity. It's like the ethos of our neighborhood.
Back to the wine thing. No, actually. So the second year we were there, we're invited to this big New Year's Eve party. And this is like a Matthew party. It's the real deal. And okay, there's a sharing of a meal, if I'm honest, but it's not breaking of bread. It's more like chips and dips and Jell-O shots and libations, that kind of thing. So we are so excited because now is our time to sort of socialize. And I think, hey, we're pretty good at that. And I know how to eat. So let's do it. So we get in there, and they open the door, and then they introduce us to everybody who's there as the pastors of Nutwood. So it was like sealed our fate, you know, right? Like outed us right off the bat. And we're going, no, we just wanted to hang and be cool. But so much for that. So I was really like now let down and thought, what is this night going to bring? But I'll tell you what, I thought people were going to avoid us the rest of the night and go have their time, but we were magnets. You know, we became the confessional. People would come up and just share their hopes and dreams and disappointments and things like regrets with things, and we were like fascinated. But you know, you see it a lot. But pain isolates people, and maybe not physically. It sometimes can, right? It can take people physically in proximity away from community, but it isolates you emotionally. And so it doesn't matter how many people are around or if your life the party. When you feel alone, you need community, true community, to bring you back. And so I know enough to know the work of healing from any trauma, any sort of suffering or pain happens in community. And so people were still having a good time. You know, they're dancing and karaokeing and drinking and doing that. But I'm telling you, the atmosphere of the conversations was just different that night, right? And after this, it was like a marker, but after this, life began to be characterized by interruptions. Our willingness to ride those interruptions is what sort of finally opened us up to partner with God, where he was clearly already at work on our street.
And I think our concept of us and them started to become a matter of we, which was a big shift for us. The interconnectedness of serving and sharing our God stories really started to redefine neighboring for us. One day, a neighbor called me from San Diego, and her dad had just died. And she said, "I don't know why I'm calling you. My dad just died. I miss him. My family's all fighting. I don't know why I'm calling you." And I shared with her my experience with God as one who comforts and brings peace to those deepest part of our souls. And I prayed with her over the phone. So this sort of sharing and serving was so intermingled, but it was like the kind of sharing that was for that moment. Another time, a neighbor, knowing I was an English teacher, asked me to help him write a letter to regain partial custody of his son. So when I went to his house, he confessed that regaining custody was not likely for him, no matter how good this letter turned out, for a variety of personal and legislative reasons. And we wrote the letter, and I shared my experience with God as one who can move mountains and does move mountains and part seas. I said I'd pray for that for him with this situation, and he was really skeptical. He did get partial custody of his son, though. And then another neighbor, another time, actually the one Lori shared about a few weeks ago, the woman who became pregnant when she should not have been able to get pregnant. She was a good friend of ours. One day she asked me if I'd take her to her doctor's appointment while she was pregnant. This was at the Veterans Hospital at Loma Linda. And so she was supposed to have an ultrasound to check on the health and viability of this baby, because the circumstances, just because she got pregnant didn't mean everything was fine. So on the way there, she acknowledged the probability that this baby would not come to full term, or that maybe it would put her life in danger, which was pretty likely. And it was like she was sort of steeling herself, for this likelihood. So while I drove, I shared my experience with God being, him being a God of miracles. And his healing power isn't limited by our medical conditions or by or by the VA benefits, which were a concern to her also. But she'd seen so much abuse in the church and in her family. She'd seen so much tragedy in her life that she couldn't really get on board with this. But she was grateful for my faith. Her ultrasound was normal, and a few months later, her baby was born healthy and hearty. And then there was another time when I had another neighbor who was so wounded by the drama of the Sparkle Ball project.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Oh, yeah.
Aren't we all?
That he threw all his sparkle balls in the trash. He threw them away, crushed them, and refused to participate. And so another neighbor and I, we knew that this had gone on for a couple years for this one neighbor. So we gathered our extra sparkle ball supplies, and we headed down the street to his driveway. And his garage was already open, and he had this kind of table out front. And so we just started building sparkle balls for him. And so he came out and kind of was a little grumpy, and we said, "Come on, we're gonna build some new sparkle balls for you." And he had all kinds of things to say, and reminded us why he was not part of this anymore. And So we said, okay, that's fine. We kept building sparkle balls, and we just kind of teased him about it, like, come on, let's move on, let's get over it. And finally, by the end, we'd built 4 sparkle balls, and he was helping us, and he was restored back into community.
Just wear him down. We have a couple more gobblers, but they're important. Hope they build your faith like they did ours. And then we'll land this plane. So there's a watchdog on our street who texts anytime there's suspicious activity, if they're speeding, if someone leaves the trash cans out too long. Maybe you guys have one in your street. Maybe someone here is one. We can pray for you after. But God bless you if you are. But he reached out to me with an SOS text, like this time it's real, right? He had a conflict with the neighbor who lived behind him, and it had gone on for a while. And he was at the end of his rope. And he was so angry. And he was like, there's no way forward. Can you come over and talk to me? So I had to go talk him down. But I just listened to him. And then I talked about this option C that he had never thought about, which was the downward escalator. He's like, what? You know, I'm like, there's power of forgiveness and reconciliation and peace. Have you felt it? It's amazing, you know? It's so much better than carrying the anger and the burden you're carrying, you know? And I said, I've seen God orchestrate it in my own life. Like, I've seen the impossible become possible, you know? And God does this heavy lifting where you don't have to do anything but watch it, you know? And then just agree with it. So I don't think he became besties with his back neighbor, but he exercised option C, sort of. He reserved the right to not do anything, which I thought was a plus. And there's another neighbor who's like our sort of street performer. Well, that sounds weird. He's our consummate entertainer, right? And he needed a wingman for his annual Christmas performance. And so every year he asked me if I would play guitar alongside him, and I'm like, I'm busy. And he's like, I got it. So after 10 years of asking, I said, like the song we sing, I said yes, right? So I decided, I'm saying yes, which obligated me to like weekly rehearsals, a portfolio of orders, you know, with scripted interludes, coordinating cowboy hats. I was like, what did I get myself into here, right? And I started to have a really bad attitude. But the time comes, and we left church here and went over there, and he's like, come on, let's do some picking. So I get to his house for set 1. You know, we're going to do 2 sets that night. And it went well, and it was fun, and I could tell he was really enjoying himself. And rather than looking out, he kept looking at me while we would play, like every time I did something. And I was like, that's kind of cool. So we went in his garage a little bit to tune up the guitars, and he said, it's so lonely being a solo act. And I went, oh, no, here it comes. He's going to ask me to be in his band, you know? And I can't do this. But he continued. He said, it's so hard, and I miss Jesus. And I was like, what? And he goes, and I know you know what I'm saying. And I'm just going, I don't remember ever, like reading the script. I just was like, whoa. And he goes, I know you know this. And I said, I do. And I go, I think he misses you too. And so we just sat there in this strange moment, and I put my hand on him and just said a quick prayer of like, this is awesome. It was surreal, you know? And then he's like, all right, let's go. Went out for our second set, and that was the most anointed version of Frosty the Snowman I had ever done. I mean, I'm telling you. Yeah. And then finally, like during the lockdown, like all of us, we were just looking for stuff to like get out, and as like Jonathan and Jenna do, like just walk. And so there's our neighbor Steve, you know. So Steve, Laurelyn, and I would just take these walks, and we'd just walk the neighborhood together, and we'd talk about struggles of being in isolation and everything on the news and all the division in the world, and then we just start praying together for hope in this new season, right? And we're still journeying, right? Yeah.
So I think we really started to learn how essential compassion is to neighboring. Compassion as opposed to pity. So in compassion, we sign up to suffer with another person. We don't stand at a distance feeling sad or sorry for someone. That's pity, and that's not a bad thing. It just isn't compassion. And so in compassion, we walk alongside, we suffer with another person, with who we know God to be. And so anyway, we've discovered that this is really essential to becoming neighbors.
And as we've learned to do life with our neighbors, We've begun to truly understand what the Apostle Paul had to say about the sincerity of love in Romans 12. And hear these words, friends. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. But in any neighborhood or workplace or school, wherever God is growing you as a neighbor, has a revolving door. It's not a one and done. You know, people come, people go, people turn over. You're right? And the art of neighboring is far less about who is in your neighborhood or what kind of flags people are flying. Think about it. Double. And it's a lot more about what it means to become a true neighbor to someone, which is what it means to become ambassadors of reconciliation, agents of mercy, bridge builders, peacemakers, and hope dealers wherever we are.
So we hope that our stories of becoming neighbors we hope God has used those to tug on you in some way. So let's stand and pray together. And if you want, you can hold your hands out in a posture of receiving. Lord, we want to be transformed by you. We want to be people of compassion and hospitality who love our neighbors as ourselves. God, would you teach us to be ambassadors of reconciliation, ones who lead our neighbors who've been wounded in relationships or other parts of their lives, lead them to your healing forgiveness. Lord, would you train us to be agents of mercy, to be people who forgive abundantly and lay down our need to be right. God, would you make us bridge builders and peacemakers, ones who patiently construct and create open lines of communication, who walk into the personal battlefields in our neighborhoods, carrying the peace of Jesus and changing the atmosphere. Would you use us as hope dealers, ones who offer hope in Jesus, showing us how to do life together with our neighbors, operating out of the abundance of love and faithfulness that you give us. Father, would you teach us what it looks like to give freely to our neighbors, knowing the supply of your love never runs out. And all of this we ask in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
And if you have to go, or if you have kids that you need to get, go for it. No shame in that. But we're going to close with this last song as they lead us. And if you're able to stay, I would just encourage you to make these words your prayer tonight. And may God seal them on your heart.
Come and meet us. Come and meet us. Oh Lord. Come and meet us. Come and meet us. Oh Lord. We belong to you. We belong to you. Oh Lord, our God, we belong to you. We belong to you. Oh Lord, our God, come and meet us. Come and meet us. Oh Lord, come and meet us. Come and meet us. Oh Lord, we respond to you. We respond to you. Oh Lord, our God, we respond to you. We respond to you. Oh Lord, our God, we say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We say yes, yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. We will follow where you lead us. We will follow, giving our yes. We will follow where you lead us. We will follow you. We will follow where you lead us. We will follow, giving our yes. We will follow where you lead us. We will follow you. We say yes, yes. We give to you our yes. Lord, I just ask that that would be our prayer after everything that's been shared tonight, Lord, that we would follow where you lead us, Lord. Would you help us to draw new maps, Lord, of our communities, whether that is our neighborhood or if that's our workplace, Lord, or even just the people around us when we're doing ordinary tasks at the grocery store or something like that, Lord. I just ask that you would just meet us in the mundane moments, Lord, and that we would just be able to be beacons of light and spread who you are and spread the gospel because it carries power, Lord. So I just ask that we would live out what was spoken tonight.